Welcome back to another edition of StreamTime Sports. I'm your host, Nick Meacham, and thrilled to be joined by my next guest, which we will introduce in just a second, and I think might be our first Irish guest on the podcast. But I was thinking before I introduced this person on which direction to take the conversation and to sort of set the scene. Firstly, I want to dig into Gaelic football in some second because with my AFL and Aussie roots, Gaelic football is somehow on my radar probably more than most countries. But before we do, I wanted to play a little bit of Who Am I? Because I think this company that we're about to talk about is probably one of the most impactful institutions in the sports media landscape, yet probably flies more under the radar than any company I can think of. Now, a little bit of context here is this company has been around for over 70 years, has over 113 members, and operates nearly 2,000 TV, radio, and online channels in more than 150 languages. They also work for 14 different sports, produce something like 43,000 hours of sport a year through agreements with different international sports federations. And you think about all the sports properties and sports broadcasters and sports media companies we talk about in this industry, this company just continues to fly under the radar. And maybe this is for good reason because of where they're based. But if you haven't guessed yet, we are talking about the EBU, or European Broadcasting Union. And I'm joined by Glen Killane, the Executive Director of Eurovision Sport, I believe, or is it EBU Sport, Glen? So make sure I haven't said that wrong first to start with.
We're working it out, Nick. We just launched a platform called Eurovision Sport, so we're having a bit of an identity crisis, but we'll hopefully work that out in the next couple of weeks.
Good stuff. Well, maybe even in this call,
EBU Sport. We'll go with EBU Sport, but Eurovision Sport works as well.
Good stuff. Well, let's go with EBU Sports because I want to talk a little bit about the EBU. But firstly, Glen, I have to talk about your background. You're from Dublin originally. I want you to set the scene a little bit about how big a sport like Gaelic football is. I like to pick random sports every now and again to talk about on the podcast to broaden the horizons of our very international audience base. And it has a lot of similarities with Australian rules football. Obviously, the ball's round, but just how big a sport is it really?
Massive. It's the biggest sport in the country, hurling and Gaelic football. I mean, Ireland would be quite well known, certainly in Britain and France, for rugby right now, but rugby doesn't even come close to the popularity of Gaelic football and hurling in Ireland. It's a huge sport. I'm from Dublin, and Dublin are the champions, the current champions of the Sam Maguire Cup, of the All Ireland Series, as it's called. It's a great event. It's completely amateur based, but there's this huge big stadium in the middle of Dublin called Croke Park, which can hold 82,000 people, and it is packed to the rafters for every All Ireland final and semi final. The kind of audiences that RTE, the rights holder, the main rights holder, my former alma mater, would generate for an All Ireland final be something in the region of 72-75% market share for the All Ireland finals. It's huge. It's just a massive sporting cultural organisation, the GAA, and we kind of lay claim to having some stake in Aussie rules. You know, there's a similarity between the sport, and I think it has something to do with the close ties that we have with Australia and how many Irish immigrants have made their way down there. And I think they play the International Rules Series. They have played it. I don't know if it's still ongoing, but where they mix it up and they play with the round ball, which is always to our advantage. But it's always great fun.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch. The international rules version is always quite a feisty affair from what I've seen over the years. I do remember at one stage, I can't remember how old was I, but about 15, 20 years ago, I think it might have got called off for a while because was getting too feisty, and there was speculation that the Aussies who obviously are very professional, as in they're well paid, the best paid athletes in Australia, probably outside the cricketers these days, and maybe even the best paid cricketers were throwing away their weight a little bit too much against amateurs. But these days, I can't imagine that sport being an amateur sport still. How does that play out when you're sitting in front of 82,000 fans? I know the Irish market's not as big as some of the others, but still feels like that's pretty crazy.
It is. It's an amazing. I mean, I think the thing about the GAA that is so wonderful is the monies generated from media rights and from ticket sales go back to the grassroots. So you drive through relatively small towns in Ireland and you will see the most amazing facilities, floodlights, AstroTurf pitches, really nice clubhouses, the real center of the community. It gets ploughed back into the grassroots, and it's playing for the parish, it's playing for the locality that the players find so it's such a hugely magnetic pull for all of the players to kind of represent their parish. The club game is the heart of the game. There's so many thousands of clubs throughout Ireland, north and south, and worldwide now as well. But predominantly on the island of Ireland. But it's an amazing organisation, and it still maintains its amateur status.
Which is pretty incredible in this day and age, and when you hear about all the professional and private equity money flying around sports, that someone doesn't have a crack at trying to turn to professional. But hey, love to hear that a sport is keeping to its core roots and really filtering at the revenues it's making into the grassroots of the game. It's the purest form of sport we've probably got at the moment, by the sounds of it. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Gaelic football, although I would love to talk more about it.
I'll happily talk all day about it, Nick. It's great.
But look, for those that are listening, definitely check it out on YouTube. It is worth seeing some of the clips and stuff. It is really a really cool sport. But look, we are here to talk about the EBU. We're here to talk about Eurovision Sport. We're here to talk about the role of the public service broadcast, because obviously that is who your core members are and who you're serving. So, Glenn, for those that aren't really familiar with really what the EBU is, they would have heard the name in some vein or some capacity, but might not be fully across what its role is in sports. Just what is the EBU and how does it affect the sports space?
Well, as your introduction kind of mentioned, Nick, the EBUs actually does fly a little bit under the radar. I think that's symptomatic of what we are and who we represent. I mean, we're here to represent our members, who are the largest kind of broadcasters in Europe and across the continent and North Africa as well. So, household names in the UK like the BBC and ITV are our members. ZDF and ARD in Germany, France Télévision in France, RAI in Italy, RTVE in Spain. These are massive organizations. So we represent all of those broadcasters across Europe. We represent all of the public media and free-to-air broadcasters that are, some of them are commercial, some of them are purely public service media. And what we do is, on my part of the forest, we do a lot of things in the EBU, but in my part of the forest, we work together with our members to negotiate sports rights and to produce sports. So, everything from the Olympic Games, 2026 to 2032 is the most recent and the largest deal in public service media history, to the FIFA World Cup, the Australia, New Zealand Women's World Cup in 23. We had across 35 markets, Tour de France, World Athletics Championships, European Athletics Championships, World Swimming, World Gymnastics, European versions of both of those, the European Soccer Championships, Euros, World Cycling, European Cycling. A lot of events, but we pull together our members to kind of strike these deals, these global or pan-European deals, sometimes global deals, and we often have to bring in partnerships for them, to make the money add up. So for the Olympics, we were lucky enough to be able to partner with Warner Brothers Discovery and put that deal together. It was an incredibly complex deal, but it was a really, it's a great partnership, and we've a long-standing partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery going back to the 1980s. When Eurosport was founded, and that was founded by the EBU, created by the EBU as a kind of a partner distribution channel for our members. And then that was sold on to TF1, the French channel, and then TF1 sold it on to Discovery, and the rest is history, as I say. But we're still partners. We partner very effectively on the Olympics, as I said, but also huge partnership on the Tour de France and on many of our cycling properties, such as the Vuelta a España as well, and UCI, the World Cycling Champs, and also some of our winter sport. One of our biggest properties is the International Biathlon Union. We have worldwide rights for that, and they're fantastic partners. And we also share those rights with Eurosport as well, and Discovery.
So a huge array of rights under your guise and under your banner that are distributed through the various partners and members of the EBU. But it's not just rights distribution, right? There's a lot more under there with regards to production that you do. Just talk us through what some of the work you're doing with the sports partners on that front.
Yeah, so we do a lot of on-site production and servicing for the properties or for the partnerships we have. So, for example, this summer we will produce the European Athletics Championships, in Rome. Just last summer we had the first ever cycling multi-sport championships in Glasgow, and we were the production wing of that, as well as the media rights holder for the entire championships. It was a really ambitious project by the UCI, to bring together every cycling discipline in one place. Glasgow did a fantastic job of pulling it all together, great facilities, but it was a big production responsibility. So we've got a lot of experience in that space. So that's one part of what we do. We also organize kind of technical distribution in terms of satellite. We work with Eurovision Services, which was a part of the EBU, but has now been sold on. So we work on satellite distribution, on technical distribution, and we handle the full chain. So everything from the acquisition of sports rights on behalf of our members to the sales of the non-member rights. So we manage those sales both within Europe and outside Europe. We now have, and I hope we'll be able to talk a little bit about our new platform, Eurovision Sport, which is launched just over 5-6 weeks ago. And that will be that's to kind of cover off all of our distribution needs, but also to offer opportunities to sports to kind of attract new audiences, with the massive attraction of having our members supporting and promoting it alongside the federations themselves. And then the production. So we offer the full chain, the full line of services to rights holders and partners. And we really believe in partnership because we're a legacy company. We're here over 70 years, and we really respect and value long-term partnerships. And many of those partnerships I mentioned, FIFA, the IOC, with a little hiatus there for about 15 years, but we're back with the IOC. Athletics, World Athletics, European Athletics, all of those relationships, ASO for the Tour de France, they go back decades. And, that's for a reason, because, we really, we're a non-profit organization. The money we gather from our members goes directly to the core of the sport, goes back to the sport. We're not taking 25% off the top. We're not an agency. So that's something unique about what we do. Our members pay a membership fee. We're here to serve them. We have members right throughout Europe, but we have also got associate members outside of Europe, like CBC Canada, the ABC and SBS in Australia, TVNZ, NHK in Japan, CCTV in China. So they also pay a membership fee, and we can work on various different things with them, not just in sport, but we also do a lot of news. So news is a huge part of what we do: news access and news sharing of news stories. And actually, we have a big sports news capacity as well, which is further enhancement to our reach, alongside everything we do in radio as well. Radio is a huge part of what we do as well. Music, the Eurovision Song Contest. I could go on. I believe we're, in the sporting sense, we're a bit of a sleeping giant, and I think we're beginning to wake up, and we're beginning to bring things together. I think people have seen that, we can really, there's a really kind of nice kind of virtuous cycle that we can develop, where we have our members working with our partners, our commercial partners like WBD, and federations, and we act as a kind of the glue that binds all of those things together and make it make sense, because we know as the EBU what we do really, really well. But we also know what we're not so good at, and that's why we're forming these fantastic partnerships with the likes of Warner Brothers Discovery or Nagra on the tech side for our platform. So it's we're in a totally new era for where we're at in Eurovision Sport at the moment.
Absolutely. So I want to dig into just a little bit of what you're talking about around the role that you guys play in, and the fact that it's a non-for-profit, the fact that there's a membership base that you've got to serve, and reflecting on some of the deals and relationships you've got to create with, let's say, the IOC as an example. When we as an industry look at the IOC's media rights strategy and say the Warner Brothers Discovery deal, the previous cycle where they took all the rights and then sub-licensed it themselves, and now that dynamic has shifted. I'm just wondering how you guys look at things like, as a non-profit, the risk factor there, because obviously someone like a Warner Brothers Discovery, is built, particularly American businesses are built on risk reward, right? They go for the home run swings, and they go for the big hits. I imagine you have to take a very different approach on how you look at things, particularly of that scale. So how do you approach a challenge like that, like the conversation around the ISE in particular?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Nick. And I suppose it's kind of goes to the very heart of what one of the things that one of the kind of the cornerstones of what we bring to the table when we speak to rights holders. We have a well kind of versed process with our membership, which is kind of, it's basically, we call it our guarantor system, where we have a process where we do what's called a situation analysis that's sent to our members, which describes an offering of rights, and describes how many, kind of how many events, etc. Gives all the details, but it's also about the formality of the financial engagement with our members. That's when that process is completed and that situation analysis has been returned from our members, that's a fully binding offer. That's effectively a government guarantee on the money that is offered. Now, very often the money that's offered isn't to the level that we need it to be for the totality of the rights on offer, because there may be a pay element to it, and that's something we don't do. So we're free to air. So we bring in partners, but the portion of the rights that we're responsible for is fully backed and fully guaranteed. So that there's effectively a government backing. It's enshrined in the kind of the rules that govern the EBU, and we haven't defaulted on a debt in our history. So it's going back quite a while. so that's one of the things. Like there are pluses and minuses to that. In terms of the taking of risk, the ability to take risk is something that is a limitation, so is somewhat of a limitation. But in terms of guaranteed, when we say that's an offer, that's an offer. That's real money backed by our members. And we can take a certain amount of risk on, say, international markets or markets where there is no member guarantor. We do have a sales process, and we do have a risk fund that can cover that in terms of the free to air elements of the deal, or the free streaming elements of the deal. But largely speaking, in terms of big speculative stuff, we don't do that. But we can partner with others who can. So, and again, the attractiveness of us as a partner is that we de-risk elements of overarching deals for more commercially minded partners.
Yeah, and makes sense. And I'm guessing the production component of some of those partnerships you have more widely is a little bit more agency style, I guess, or is it a bit of a hybrid of the two between agency and shared risk or shared a partnership model?
Well, I suppose it's kind of, really, it has to all add up. I mean, the production has a cost attached to it. We assess that cost, and we can do that. I mean, actually, production is one area that I'm not in a position to say who, but we're about to announce a partnership in on the production side, on the HB side of things, which will help us scale that part of our business. At this point in time, we do a lot of production. We want to scale. We see that as an opportunity to scale up, particularly with our new platform and the new relationships that we have with the platform. It gives us an opportunity to engage with other sports that we don't traditionally engage with, but also gives us an opportunity to look at those services we can provide. And so we will be, I would say, in a matter of weeks, announcing a new partnership in that space, similar to what we did on the platform. But yeah, I think what we do with production is we bake that into the overall pie, if you like, in terms of the overall financial pie. And that's an element. And again, that can be funded various ways. So, for example, European Athletics, it's funded through the host cities. When they get a host city, the production is part of that. And that's kind of something that we then go and we cost it based on the facilities on the ground and what the cost might be in that respect.
So, okay, so we've painted the picture there of EBU's role. Now, it's all fundamentally linking with the role of public service broadcasters, and it probably links with a bigger question around what is their role today in the sports landscape. There's been a lot of question marks from all of us in the industry going, okay, just how does the mix look today to what it did look like? Before we go down that line too far, let's talk about Eurovision Sport, the new platform you've launched, because I think that does start to fill out the flywheel and maybe answer some questions where we're getting to there. Why did you guys decide to launch your own direct-to-consumer and OTT service?
Well, I came into this role in June 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, or just the beginning of the pandemic, and there were two main objectives that I'd set myself and that I kind of pitched in my interview, if you like. One was to secure the Olympic rights, bring them back to the EBU, and kind of make bring that the core of what the EBU's kind of portfolio was about back here. And then the second piece was to launch a digital platform. So why a digital platform for the likes of us? Why does that make sense? Just if I rewind a little bit, my previous life before here, for 2 years, I ran OTT channels for Aircom, OTT Sport, and their IPTV television services for 2 years before I came to the EBU. Before that, it was working for RTE as managing director of television and director of sports. And I'd worked as a producer. I was a live football editor for ITV in London for a couple of years, and I've been mainly editorial functions in RT. So, but my background immediately prior to coming to the EBU was OTT. There was a plethora of direct-to-consumer OTT plays from sports. Now, what was happening there was we were building OTT services. These services were fantastic. They looked great. They did everything you needed them to do, but they'd no audience. So I kind of liken them to cathedrals in the desert. It's just kind of all of these, but there was thousands of them. And I felt that actually the audience was getting forgotten as well, that this was becoming a very, very difficult and quite clumsy consumer experience, that actually this needed to be aggregated, this needed to be brought together. And that kind of coalesced with what was happening in our world here, which was looking at the rights market. We were seeing that there's so many markets, so many sports that were just not getting a foothold in certain markets. You'd say that's always going to happen. Like, rugby union is not going to sell big in Serbia, or it's not going to be a big thing in Greece. But I think what we're what we're looking at is kind of more global sports that do have an appeal, kind of like, a lot of the Olympic sports, for instance, they do have an appeal pretty much in every market, but that traditional market by market sales thing was just not going to work. So what we felt was, we had a proposition here. We had a lot of our own rights that we weren't able to kind of use, and they weren't getting seen. So I'm talking about under 23 World Athletics, or cross country, European cross country championships would be seen in maybe 15 markets, but we had 52 markets to cover or more. So what do we do with those rights? Do they just disappear? So we were streaming anyway. We were streaming these things anyway as part of our obligations. So what we said, we brought them all together and said, look, we've got a lot of rights here. We got to use them. There is a market for them, and we did a lot of analysis, and we worked with outside advisors, business casing this, and we felt there was a really strong business case here. But to create something really unique, which was the first and the biggest kind of free sports OTT play, but with the added cachet that this sports platform would be embedded within our member platforms, so that we would have that built-in reach straight away. Because the one thing, if I learned anything in my time in OTT in Ireland, there are three components to a successful OTT. There's great content, obviously. There's great tech, obviously. But the piece that people forget is that you need to have an extraordinary amount of money to promote and to market. And if you don't have that, it's not going to work. I found at Aircom, what was happening was we had a direct billing relationship with every single household in the Irish market. We had a BT Sport type operation where we bundled BT Sport with Air Sport, and we gave all of that fantastic content away for free. And we found it extremely difficult to get more than 50% of our customers to actually take the content for free. And it was like, we're giving you a premium content for free because you're a customer. It's just, marketing, getting the message across. And no matter how hard we tried, I still was amazed to find that people didn't know we existed or what we were doing. So what we have with the EBU is we have this incredible network of broadcasters who have this incredible reach that's built up over decades. And what we're trying to do with the platform is harness that reach for the benefit of sport and create this kind of ecosystem where we network all of our member platforms and we bring sport along with us. And we bring all these sports with us, and we have a kind of an advertising sponsorship play, but also the capacity to help sports understand their markets better by leveraging the data that we can gather as well. Because that's untried, that's untested waters. Because what we're seeing with pay channels is an incomplete data set of sports fans in Europe, certainly. We did some research when I came into the job first with Ampere Analysis in London, and it showed us that 2/3 of self-professed sports fans in Europe do not pay for sports services. So there's 2/3 of the market that we're just not seeing, and I think we can tap into that, and I think we can really help sports understand their markets better, our partners better, can understand those markets better, and we can all work together on it. It should be one of those kind of collaborative efforts where everybody gains something out of it.
Absolutely. So you've talked about the fact that the offering or the platform, so the rights will be available through the public service broadcasters to give you that instant reach. Just talk us about the bit of the nitty gritty there. Is how is that available? I've seen the platform on my phone and on desktop, but how are you bringing that to life on your respective members' platforms?
Yeah. Our members are so diverse and varied. You've got everything from BBC in the UK to Georgian TV to TV channels in Kosovo, etc. So you've got everything in between that, and all of them have different types of models. Some are fully public service, funded through public service remittance, and no commercial activity whatsoever. And you've got other members like ITV in the UK who are a member of the EBU who are fully public service but fully commercial. And then you have kind of hybrid solutions like RTE in Ireland or ORF in Austria, where it's part public service and part commercially funded. And actually, quite a large majority of our members have that model where it's kind of a bit of everything. What will happen for us is, and we're on this road now, this journey for the next 6 months, where we will be rolling this out and embedding the platform within our members. So if our member is a commercial broadcaster, has some commercial activity, we will look to embed. Now that can be a full embed or it can be a kind of a lighter, click through embed. But what we're looking for there is we will sit like almost like another channel within our member platforms, so that they will have that kind of instantaneous promotion. We're looking for that promotion of the sports events that are coming up. So I think it's this weekend, the boat race is happening. We have the boat race across Europe. So we'll be asking our members to promote the boat race in all of the markets that we have access to. And I think that promotional piece is the kind of magic sauce for us. That is what those sports want. And obviously, we want to have multiple events. We want to have 20, 30, 40 different federations on the platform. I think we're at about 10 at the moment, but we'll hope to grow, and we have some very, very exciting sports coming up, new acquisitions, if you like, for the platform that we hope we can kind of grow their profile and over time and kind of give them more access to kind of these markets and exposure to our members. So we have this kind of experimentation and testing where we can test these sports out in these markets, and perhaps our members over time would want to take some of it, would certainly use clips or news clips or for magazines, etc. And we'd hope to grow that. One of the big things for us is women's sport. We have a completely gender diverse, in terms of male female split. We're pretty much equal across our entire portfolio. But we, in particular, women's football is one that we want to push as part of our agreement with FIFA for the 2023 World Cup. We committed to working with FIFA to grow the game in the markets where it wasn't seeming to take off, where the profile was low. And surprisingly, that's quite a lot of markets. That's kind of 20 plus markets in Europe where really we need to work much harder together. So we've come up with a strategy with FIFA where we want to, Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, said, we could try and get an hour a week out in every market. I think some markets are massively over that amount, and other markets have a long way to go. So the platform can really assist those markets getting that content out there. But women's sport in general is something that we're really focused on, and a kind of providing a safe place for athletes to kind of be out there, and sticking to the kind of the values of public service media, which is kind of really cherishing that diversity, and that the whole diversity inclusion piece is really, really big for us, and something we want to build on over the next couple of years.
Interesting. I mean, it's a really interesting concept. It feels, I don't know if this is off the mark, Glenn, but it feels a bit like what Eurosport used to be, in terms of like trying to be a platform with lots of different sports, and it changed a lot over the years, and it's obviously influence given once the Americans sort of took over the product, and filling a void, perhaps particularly across the European markets and wider than that has been long, I guess, being pushed to the side while they've been focused around growing many sports broadcasters around top tier sports rights exclusively, and leaving give a gap and a chasm between those rights and everyone else. But talking about how it all came to be, I mean, one of the things you mentioned briefly is you mentioned that you're working with Nagra to build this platform. Just talk about the extent of that relationship, and is it just a tech service relationship where they're delivering the service? Is it more of a joint venture? How does that relationship play out?
Yeah, I mean, we were very, very fortunate to kind of have Nagra come in as a partner. We went through a very, very thorough process with a number of players in the running for it. It's very much a partnership. It's very much about partnership. It's back to that point that I made earlier. We know what we're good at, but we know what we're not so good at, and we're not a tech company. We have a fantastic technology and innovation division within the EBU, but it's more about setting standards, working together with our members, kind of things like, 5G, things like, audio in cars, setting standards for the industry. That's what our T&I people do. They do a really, really good job. But we're not here to build platforms. So Nagra have come in, and they're as a joint partner. We bring the rights, they bring the tech, and we bring the kind of the ability to promote and the ability to grow it. And we're really delighted with the partnership. They've been incredibly proactive. They've got huge expertise in a whole range of innovative worlds that we can only kind of dream of here. But they're extremely collaborative, and that's what you want. And this is about kind of a mutual partnership where we will share whatever revenues come down the line. If it develops into a joint venture, who knows? I think it may well. If we're successful, it definitely probably will, because we're non-profit, and that would certainly create problems for our status. But at this point in time, it's in very much it's embryonic stages, and having launched in February, we're very hopeful. We've made some good progress, with the app itself. These things are iterative, but we wanted to get out in February because we particularly 3 fantastic world championships in February, the World Aquatics Champs, the World Biathlon Championships in Novo Mesto in Czech Republic, and we had the World Indoor Athletics Championships at the end of beginning of March in Glasgow as well. So it was great content to launch with, and we had great opportunities to get the word out there about the platform. But it's going to be one of constant improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges with launching an OTT platform has been about the monetization piece and funding it. Now, you have a unique framework on how you're funded full stop, so it might change. You guys might look at it through a different lens. But how much does the sponsorship advertising component, how significant do you think that can be, because of the way you're working with different pub PSBs? You've got a whole unique framework. It feels like that has to be pretty difficult to navigate because of the different places it's going to be popping up, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Well, we've set ourselves an ambition of breaking even within 3 years. So we know that we've got to take a little bit of pain in the first couple of years and build it up. But I think, Nick, that one of the things about our proposition is we're not aiming to buy the Premier League rights. We're not aiming to buy Champions League or any of the Formula One or anything like that. We may work with those federations in the future, who knows, but it's under different terms and conditions. So the barrier to clear is a lot lower. The core of the proposition is content that we already own, that we want to serve our partners better by making sure that their content, every second of their content, is available in every single market that we cover. So that's the starting proposition. And then we want to add in other sports to try and create that dynamic where, listen, everyone's invited here. The audience has no barrier to entry, but there's no barrier to entry for sports either. We want those sports to come in, and we want to, I suppose, back to the old days of the Reithian principles. We want to surprise and delight, give people the opportunity to look at these sports for free. So there's a lot of difference between our business model and, say, DAZN. We're in a different business, and we can actually partner with DAZN, or we are partnering with WBD, and we want to partner more with them. So we're not excluding any partnerships. We will talk to the big American sports, who are looking for a foothold in Europe and exposure. It's back to that kind of, part Barker channel type approach that we can play here. Highlights could play a significant part in what we do. We'll use social channels a lot to get out there, but predominantly we'll use the social channels that have huge, when I look at our membership, one of the great kind of eye openers for me is, like, you look at our digital platforms of our members in each market, they're in the top three. The Finns are ahead of Netflix. The Swedes are ahead of Netflix, and there are several others that are up there, right? Toe to toe with Netflix and Amazon. So, like, we're not talking about Mickey Mouse operations here. We're talking about organizations that are really punching above their weight because they're providing great local content. And I think that's what we want to work with our members to try and harness that for the good of sport. And I think there's a really, really positive public service message here, that you're serving underserved audiences for sports that kind of reach a kind of a pinnacle during the Olympic Games and kind of fall off a cliff then for the next 3-4 years. So there's something up there, and I think if there's an interest at the Olympic Games in a collective sense and an aggregated sense, then maybe there's an interest on our app and on our platform in an aggregated sense too, that you come and you can watch sport easily, and we can also guide people towards where sport is happening on other platforms as well, and that could be an ambition down the line as well.
So taking a step back and looking at the members that you have, Glen, one of the things been happening progressively over the last 10 to 20 years has been the proliferation of pay TV and their use of sport, particularly across European markets. And indeed, in the US is a bit of an exception rather than the rule about what's happening over there around media rights. And actually, we're seeing media rights flatten from a value perspective across a number of markets, particularly across Europe. Just what is your view on what the role of a public service broadcaster is, whether it relates to sports? Has it changed, or is it still fundamentally the same foundations as it was 10, 20 plus years ago? Or has it changed because of the new era of media, with social media playing such a big role in creating reach and awareness through non-live content?
I think there's a very strong. I mean, I think one of the pieces we've been trying to address now for the last number of years as a kind of a core strategic aim is the repositioning of public service media in the sports landscape in Europe. I think if you think back 10, maybe even as recent as maybe 7 years ago, public service media and free to air was being written off completely. Like this, the streamers are coming, you guys are dead. That patently has not happened. I think in some respects we're much stronger than we were 7-8 years ago, where everyone's finding out that, look, this is not a simple equation. This is not a kind of a one size fits all, that you will have different flavors to try and address market things that are happening in the market. For example, is free to air going to play a big role in the Premier League in the UK in the future? Probably not, outside of highlights, kind of the match of the day type approach. But can free to air continue to play a role in international football and international tournaments such as the World Cup and the European Championships? Absolutely. Is free to air absolutely vital to the growth of the women's game in football? I would say absolutely. I think without the commitment of free-to-air broadcasters, our members, and the EBU, I don't think the growth of the game is secure. And I think FIFA will say that themselves. Sarai Berman attended our sports assembly back last October. She's a brilliant communicator and a hugely inspirational figure in the game. And she was very clear that the FIFA and EBU and our members and worldwide free-to-air broadcasters need to get behind this movement. And it is a movement at this point in time to keep the growth going. But is there a time, will there be a time in the future, 5, 10, 15 years hence, where women's football may not need free-to-air again in terms of the club game or whatever? Perhaps. And maybe, maybe I even hope that is the case, because that will mean that we've done a great job and that we'll have a very strong presence in the international game always, So, but I think you're looking at things like Women's Champions League right now. It's in market. Where will that go? I think there has to be some free to air element there to try and give the profile, but that doesn't mean it needs to be all on free to air. I think there's definitely a happy medium. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Nick, because I'm rambling a bit here. But to be honest, I think our positioning in the market now is one of, we're very, very confident in what we do well. We know we don't do everything well, just as others in the market, commercial players, know that they can't cover off everything. But we do feel that we can collaborate much more effectively than we did in the past, and we can partner really effectively. And it doesn't have to be that has to be free or that has to be paid. There can be a real, just like the Olympic Games deal done, there's a really, really nice happy medium between ourselves and Warner Bros. Discovery for that deal. So I think we can replicate that, and that private-public partnership piece is something that I'm very interested in developing further and continuing to harp on about to people like you.
Well, I'm with you in terms of, I think, the importance and the need to have significant free-to-air access for sports. Otherwise, even looking through my own lens of like this day and age where we have mobile devices in our hand, sports is still that last point of appointment viewing that exists outside of what the VOD services provide, right? So, I mean, obviously, public service broadcasters are still getting great numbers to their platforms generally, because people also don't want to be always choosing what they want to watch. They just want to be able to turn on and consume great content. The challenge still seems to be around the tension around commercialization and how to generate more return when there's a lot of competitive players in the market. Do you see, Glenn, that there is now more competition than ever before, or do you think that competition has dissipated a little bit in and around when you're talking to sports properties or federations and whatnot about the prospect of working together? Is it everyone chasing the check? There's a period of time where they're all chasing the check from the next big thing, next great thing. That's now calmed down a little bit. Now people are looking at a bigger picture. That's my theory anyway. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Nick. I think it's much more of I think there's a much more grown-up response now. It's a much longer-term play. I think you're seeing private equity coming into sports, investing. It's a longer-term play. It's not a kind of flip it in 3 to 5 years and hope we make a huge amount of money out of it. I think it's much more gradual. Let's look at the sport. Let's look, I think Formula One was the classic example. What's happened with Formula One has been extraordinary. But I think there's still areas where that could be improved. I think Netflix has added a huge element to it. I think there could be a bit more of a bit more of a free to air play, whether that is highlights. It's about profile and kind of raising profile and making it accessible, because there will always be a certain portion of the market that are sports fans that won't pay for it. And I think, we need to kind of keep those people actively engaged with those sports. So in terms of competition in pockets in different markets, you've got some markets that are incredibly hot. I think I look at certain things that have happened, say, in Benelux and Belgium recently on the Tour of Flanders, which is like, this is like their GAA, their Gaelic football, to go back to the opening kind of discussion we had. Because RTL came in, you're always going to have those, 3 years ago, the Nordic region was just beyond belief, bonkers. 300% increases on rights, and our members were really struggling, and they couldn't cope with it. But then Viaplay, things caught up. Whether whatever the reasons were there, whether it was overpaying or underestimating kind of revenues or whatever. I'm not the expert to kind of point to what happened, but certainly, there's much more of a realistic approach now. So these things are cyclical. You'll get it's very rare you'll get a kind of a continental wide where the market's hot. You'll get pockets where the market is really hot and pockets where it's just flat or in decline. And that's just the way of things. It's just always been that way.
So Glenn, just to I guess to get to the point, we've done a pretty full spectrum of covering what the EBU is doing from a sports perspective. We talked about Eurovision Sport and its role and place in the mix. Just to wrap things up a little bit, I guess, are there any other areas or aspects you're focused on that are an extension of what you're already doing, or is really this new streaming and OTT offering and offering that you're providing members, is that really the real priority right now to get that in place and making a real impact across all your members?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one priority for us will always be acquiring the best content on behalf of our members. Everything else we do is symptomatic of that, or is in a way to try and assist that. So, the platform is probably the biggest project that the EBU has taken on since the launch of Eurosport in the late 80s. So I'm not going to downplay that. That is a huge, huge priority. But the reason we're doing it, it's not just for my, for my ego or to grow a digital platform. It's to assist us in ensuring that we are providing that huge service to our members, that we're able to do it efficiently, we're able to do it well, that we're able to create new revenue streams to try and underpin those rights and kind of support those rights. But no, I mean, I think if you kind of say that it's a given that the rights will always be the number one, the platform is definitely a huge project. There's a huge amount of work to be done. I'm incredibly excited about it. We're getting a massive reaction from the market in terms of the rights holders are really enthused by it. And why are they enthused? They're enthused because we can offer that connection with our members. We can offer that reach. We can offer that opportunity to engage in markets where they just simply were blacked out, or they were either hidden behind paywalls where they're not really suited to being on a pay channel, or they're going direct themselves and it's costing them a lot of money. We can take a lot of that pain out of it for rights holders. We can take pain out of it for our members because we're bearing the costs. And really what we're trying to do is bring it together and really promote the hell out of it and push it. So, the next 12, 24 months will be all about building the proposition, getting our name out there. So you'll probably hear the name Eurovision Sport a lot more. We haven't been heard a lot before, quite rightly, because we were B2B and we didn't need to be, but we do need to be more B2C now. But working with our members and ensuring that we will never compete with our members on this platform. This will be in complete complementarity with our member offering. We will redirect to our members when they're showing an event that we have that people come looking for on the platform. So, everybody's going to get something out of this, we hope. And hopefully we can make it stand up on its own 2 feet in terms of finances as well, because that's really what it's about. We've got to make it self-sustaining, and there's no big cash cow here at the end of it that's going to big pool of money that's going to fund it indefinitely. This has to stand on its own 2 feet.
Definitely. Well, look, there's a lot of technology now that is making that more and more accessible. You're working with a great partner in Nagra, which I've been following a lot over the years and has worked on some pretty cool projects. But it seems like the growth of advertising is the next big opportunity across streaming players in this market versus what you're seeing in the US. So, I think it's a good time to be launching something like this. But that is my own anecdotal view. So you've got my backing anyway, Glenn. But
thanks, Nick.
But look, that is all we've got time for, Glenn. Thank you so much for joining us and helping paint the picture. And look forward to seeing where you guys take things over the next year or two and seeing that Eurovision Sport brand popping up all over the place.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Before you go, myself and Nick would just like to thank you for tuning into this episode of StreamTime. If you found the episode insightful, please make sure you like and subscribe on whichever platform you listen to. As a growing podcast, we'd greatly appreciate your support in sharing or writing a review. Ultimately, we want this podcast to not only entertain you, but also hopefully help you navigate the digital sports landscape. If you have any feedback on previous episodes or any topics and speakers you'd like to hear from in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find myself and Nick Meacham on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SportsProChris1. Nick can be found @SportsProNick. Of course, if you want to stay fully up to date on the sports business news cycle, please make sure to visit the Sports Pro Media website or sign up to one of our several newsletters to make sure you don't miss anything. Once again, thank you, and we look forward to you joining us next week on the StreamTime podcast.